We are so excited about this new series we're going to be doing for the next 5 weeks called Movement, Inc. You wonder what that's about? It's going to be about the movement of movements, the movement of heaven coming to earth. And this was so important, this content, that even though I was gone this weekend, that I communicate this to get the series started because it is critical to the time we are living in to create the impetus and the momentum of the movement of the kingdom of God on earth, the kingdom of heaven, Movement, Inc. Seeds and weeds and trees, treasures and fish. That's what we're going to look at in the next few weeks as we examine the 7 parables of Christ in Matthew 13. 7 parables of the kingdom of heaven. Now, we don't live in a monarchy, so we don't use the word kingdom much. But really, when we talk about the kingdom of heaven, when we talk about the kingdom of God, we're talking about what in our day we would be calling the enterprise of God, the enterprise of heaven, the initiative, the movement to bring heaven to earth. And so we're excited because today begins a new series called Movement, Inc. That's really all the church is. The church was never meant to be this static, inert, boring building where people who are boring get bored even more and judge the world. It was never meant for that. It was meant to be a movement, a task force of bringing up there, down here. And so we're going to study these 7 parables for the next 5 weeks, and I'm very excited as we're going to call you to do something very, very simple, and that is join the movement. Now, I know some of you say, well, hey, I'm already part of the movement. Yes, that's right. We want you to rejoin it. We want you to re-up because Southbrook is in many, 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 many ways 2-0. We are starting the movement over right now in this COVID-19 2020. And so today we're going to begin by taking a look at a parable about seeds and soil. It says in Matthew 13:1 that Jesus went out of the house that he'd been staying in and sat by the lake. That would be the Sea of Galilee. And such large crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat in it. Now, Jesus loved boats. It's real clear he loved boats. He loved to be out on the water. It's another thing about Jesus that I loved is he loved boats. While all the people stood on the shore. So he's using this boat as a pulpit, as a platform. And then he told them many things in parables. A parable is an earthly story set aside alongside a heavenly point or principle so that the listener who wants it goes, that's what that's about. And so here is the beginning of 7 parables about the movement of God in your life and in mine and in our church. And he says, a farmer went out to sow a seed. Very common occurrence in that agricultural day. And as he was scattering the seed, he would have his pouch and he would just be scattering seeds. Some fell along the path. This is where people walked. What happens to a path of dirt where people walk? It gets hardened and the birds came and ate it up. It couldn't get absorbed into the soil. And some fell, second soil, on rocky places, stony places where it did not have much soil. Very common in the Middle East is a limestone base that has a thin topsoil, and it sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. So it grew quickly, but didn't have any depth. When the sun came up, the plants were scorched and they withered because they had no root. Other seed, third soil, fell among thorns or weeds, which grew up and choked the plants. So here's the soil, had great potential, but too much in it. Still other seed fell on good soil, where it produced a crop 160 or 30 times what was sown. And he said, whoever has the ears to hear, let them hear. Now, he's saying here, if you really hear this, it's not just with your ears, it's with your soul. You're listening, you're learning, you're leaning into this because you want. And the disciples came to him and said, why do you speak in parables to the people? Why do you do this all the time? Why is this your style, Jesus? And Jesus goes on to describe that the reason he does that is because I want to see who wants it. I want to see who will take the time to think this through and figure it out. We're going to give you time at the end to do just that, to literally do what Jesus did when he told parables, and that is, I'm going to sit and listen to what God might be saying to me and then what I should do about it. Well, when you get through the explanation Jesus gives for giving parables, he then gets to verse 18 where he does something he doesn't do with any other parable. He actually describes the parable. Verse 18 says, when anyone hears the message about the kingdom and does not understand it, and this is by their choice, the evil one comes and snatches away what was sown in their heart. This is the seed sown along the path. We're going to call this the callous soil. The seed falling on rocky ground refers to someone who hears the word and at once receives it with joy. Oh, I love this. I love this message of Christ, and I love the hope of the gospel, the good news of Christ. But when trouble or persecution comes because of that very message, the word, they quickly fall away. The seed falling among the thorns refers to someone who hears the word, but the worries of this life, the deceitfulness of wealth, choke the word. This is a person who has great potential, but they have too much. Too much in their life. They have the too much life, and it makes it unfruitful. But the seed falling on good soil refers to someone who hears the word and understands it. And it means they process it, they apply it to their life, they work at it, they learn, they listen, they lean into it. And this is the one who produces a crop yielding 160 or 30 times what was sown. In that day, a 30 times crop was a big crop. This person, more happens in their life of heaven coming to them and through them than they ever could have dreamed. The four conditions are calloused, careless, cluttered, and cultivated. Let's take a look at these in depth. The first condition Jesus talked about was the calloused condition. The seed fell among the path where people walked. And this individual who, I don't have time for this. Have you ever wondered why some people who are so smart and they never get this? It's because they don't want it. Oftentimes what causes callousness, one of two things causes a callous soul to not want to absorb this unbelievable message that in Christ God has come to us and has taken care of all the big things. Our past is forgiven. Our present is empowered. Our future is secure. The whole message, now you're free to love. And two things usually are what create the callous condition. One is suffering. The same sun that melts the ice hardens the clay. Suffering makes some people better, makes some people bitter. It makes some people listen and learn and lean into the message of Christ. It makes other people resist it because life's not fair. And the other one is sin. The problem with just blatantly disobeying God is we change. We change. Sin, this entity of sin that is like a virus spiritually, it hardens the soul. It creates a callousness to where we no longer have a sensitivity to the movement of heaven in our life. This is why in Hebrews chapter 3 it says, encourage one another daily, Southbrook, so that none of you may be hardened by the deceitfulness of sin. what sin, moral sin, ethical sin, relational sin, what it promises, it never delivers. It's deceitful, and that tends to harden people. As a matter of fact, a lot of times people who are resistant to the gospel, they may say it's an intellectual sticking point, or they may say it's an emotional sticking point. It's usually a moral sticking point. Sometimes, yes, people can't figure it out intellectually because they're so smart, I suppose. Sometimes it's emotional, a hurt in their life can't allow them to trust in a God they cannot see. But usually it's a moral argument. Over time, sin won't let us change. And to receive this seed of the gospel into the soil of my soul, I would have to change, and I don't want to. The next soil is the careless condition. The careless condition is the shallow condition, Jesus says. And this is the person who they have an enthusiasm about hearing this. You maybe even today is your first day at Southbrook and you go, oh my gosh, I never knew there was a church like this. I never knew the claims of Christ, that He's taken care of my past, my present, my future. I never knew that heaven has come to earth and now I'm free to love and to live. And I love it. And then life doesn't work out according to our script. And we wonder, is this worth it? Or the claims of the gospel are not socially acceptable and they cost us. If you find yourself in this emotional-based faith and you want to get out of it, there is a way to, first of all, understand that we believe in the excitement of faith. The byproduct that happens when you are seeing God move in your community, in your life, and there are changes, and there's hope that you have, and there's grace that you have, that's great. We believe in the excitement of faith. We don't believe in the faith of excitement. That, where's my next faith hit? Where's my next religious euphoria? And then we begin to equate emotion with faith. I believe in the emotion of faith. I don't believe in the faith of emotion. So you have to accept that. You also have to understand there are two characteristics of people who go from shallow to deepening. And they combine this development of Scripture into their life while they're growing grit. Scripture and grit. Those two are infallible combinations of depth and deepening your soul. Get a copy of Jesus Calling by Sarah Young. It is certainly not the end all of Scripture into your life, but it can get you started in bringing Scripture and teaching into your life every day. And then do things in your life that grow your intellectual, emotional, physical grit muscle. I always tell people, you work out, do one more repetition. Why? Because you're growing your grit muscle. And when you go beyond feeling by reading Scripture when you don't want to and growing grit when you don't want to, you're deepening yourself beyond just emotion. Cavett Robert once said, maturity is the ability to stay with a resolution long after the mood in which the resolution was made has passed. In other words, the person of depth is not controlled by emotion. They enjoy emotion, they celebrate positive emotions, but they've learned the self-control of doing what you got to do even when you don't want to do it over time. The third condition is the cluttered condition. And Jesus said, this is the person who the worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth are like weeds and thorns that have never been hoed out. They've never been uprooted, and they strangle out the good seed. They take the nutrients of the soil. This verse right here has saved me many times. He's really saying, here are the growth-strangling thorns that you have to watch out for: pressures, possessions, and pleasures. Matter of fact, Mark in his gospel says the worries of this life, the deceitfulness of wealth, and the desire for other things. The desire for other things. When your life is not, everything is centered around bringing the kingdom of Christ, the rule of Christ, the movement of Christ in and through my life, you'll find that pressures, possessions, and pleasures/pursuits will be the thorns that strangle out the potential of Christ in and through your life. The fact of the matter is, many of you struggle with this, not because you can't get it. It's because you have too much. You have too much. You need to look at, do I have unnecessary pressures in my life because I'm seeking the American dream and I want it all? Do I just not have time and energy left over for the priority of Christ in my life and His movement through His church because I just have too many possessions to manage? Or what about pleasures and pursuits? Those things that are good, like any possession or any pressure, they can be good, but it's too much. This verse alone, as I said, has saved me many times, and I've had opportunities. Hey, why don't you pursue this? Why don't you go after this? Because you know a lot of people, and you could start this business. You could do, and many times this opportunity has been thwarted because I remember this verse of Scripture that it's the too much life that makes the potentially productive soil cluttered. It doesn't mean you're bad. It just means your life's way too cluttered. This is the most common condition in Southbrook. I have had a front row seat for many years to many of us who have unbelievable potential for the kingdom of heaven to work in and through us. But we have the too much life. There's just too much. Too many pressures, too many possessions, too many pleasures can choke. But then there's the last one, the cultivated condition. The cultivated condition is the person who's intentional about keeping their soul clean. Right off the third soil, it's the person who they're intentional about managing the pressures of their life. In the language of our church, they've learned how to walk on water and navigate the waves, the pressures of life that come their way. They don't have unnecessary ones because they're trying to have it all and achieve the American dream every bit as much as they're actualizing the kingdom of heaven in their life. They've cleaned that out. They don't have more possessions than they need to manage. The only possessions they have are the ones that actually bring gratitude into their life with a clean soul. And they certainly don't pursue things that take them off their focus of the kingdom of heaven. And this can be you. You see, what is the point of this parable? The point of this parable is not to categorize people. It's real easy to look at this and go, yeah, I know, my wife's a cluttered soul, or my husband's a calloused condition. That's not the point. The point of this parable is every single one of us listening to this has the potential to be any one of these conditions in any given season of life. Listen, including the cultivated soil that has a richly productive reality around its life. This is so exciting because this means you don't have to live the American way, pressured, too many possessions, too much pleasure in my life, and I want God, but so much of my identity is formed around these things, and I want God, but so much of my identity. I mean, we go through this struggle. The point is that today you and I can say, God, I come to you with a soul that wants you more than anything. I surrender all. I want everything in my life, all of my pressures, all my possessions, all my pleasures to be directed toward allowing the movement of God to come through out of my life. And it has to be an I surrender all. There is no halfway on this. There's no, I pursue the American dream and I also pursue Jesus. It has to be a consuming pursuit of Christ. We want to call you to join the movement. To understand that today you can begin the steps toward being the cultivated soil. And you look back on your life someday and you say, I was a part of the Movement, Inc. I was a part of the enterprise of God to bring heaven to earth, and my life counted. Well, so the adversary, our evil one, cannot steal this seed from your soul. We want you to sit in this for a few moments. And listen to this song and absorb the gospel of Christ calling out to you. Listen, learn, lean into this with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength, and say, Jesus Christ, I surrender all today. Those of you who are hurting, you're in a good place because you know you are needing this. Those of you who are doing pretty well and don't think you need this, and Jesus is just option B, may God save your soul. May Christ come to you today and say, I have more for you than this life.
Caught up in your presence, and I just want to sit here at your feet. I'm caught up in this holy moment. I never want to leave. Oh, I'm not here for blessings, 'cause Jesus, you don't owe me anything, and more than anything that you can do, I just want you. I'm sorry when I've just gone through the motions. I'm sorry when I just sang another song. You take me back to where we started. I open up my heart to you. I'm sorry when I've come with my agenda. I'm sorry when I forgot that you're enough, and take me back to where we started. I open up my heart to you. I'm caught up in your presence. I just wanna sit here at your feet. I'm caught up in this holy moment. I'm never worried. Oh, I'm not here for blessings, 'cause Jesus, you don't know me anything, and more than anything that you can do, I just want you. I just want you, and nothing else, and nothing else, nothing else but you. I just want you, and nothing else, and nothing else, nothing else will do. I just want you, and nothing else, and nothing else, nothing else will do. I just want you, and nothing else, and nothing else, and nothing else, and nothing else will do. I just want you, and nothing else, and nothing else, nothing else will do. I just want you.